Jordan. I am the Director of Assessment Accountability and School Support for Racine Unified School District, and I thank you for tuning in tonight for Parent University. Tonight we're going to be talking about 4 of the assessments that our kiddos take here at Racine Unified School District. They are the Pre-K PALS test, the Access test, the Forward, and the MAP. So if you have questions as we go along tonight, I am more than happy to answer those. A little bit about me. I am a RUSD lifer. I taught for 11 years at J.I. Case High School, both English as well as reading intervention. I became an administrator and was an administrator at schools such as the old Gilmore Middle School, Walden, Jerstead-Agerholm, and came into this role, as Ms. Howell and I were talking, about a month and a half before COVID hit. And so for me, it's been a real learning experience in the current situation of how these assessments are able to be applied and how the assessments are used by the academic instructors and parents. And so for me, this is a very important and near and dear topic to me because I was an intervention teacher before I became an administrator and now a director. And so again, if you have questions, I am more than happy to answer them as we go through. So the big question, not only as an educator, but as a parent, are what did the test mean for me as well as my family and my own students? So what we're going to talk about tonight are looking at what do the assessments measure. We're going to take a look again, like I said, at Pre-K PALS, Access testing, Forward testing, MAP testing, which are 4 of the major standardized tests that our kiddos take at the elementary and middle school levels. We're going to talk about what the tests mean and how the results are used by the teachers as well as the buildings. We will take a look at the testing calendar that is available on the RUSD website, so parents do have access to the calendar and are able to see what their kiddos are taking, as well as when those tests are administered. We will also be talking about how families can prepare for assessments. My own student is currently taking his MAP test this week, so he and I prepare each morning before he heads out for 2nd grade to make sure he is ready to put in his best effort. And also how families can understand the results and use the results in family discussions as well as supporting their own students. So those are some of the things we're going to be covering tonight. So the assessments, the first question is, what do assessments measure? As a parent, I oftentimes would get assessment results, and my question would be for my oldest son, well, what does this mean? And his response to me, I don't know, they make me take it. And so getting not only my son, but I on the same page for what those tests mean for him and how they reflect him academically is a big, big part of him putting in a heck of a lot more effort in his assessments than he had previously. So the assessments are a measurement to measure our students' performance and ability at a certain set time. It is to look at where our students are on a national as well as a state standard level, but it's one snapshot in time. And so oftentimes, especially when we talk about our MAP test, you will see that administrators and principals will state that this is just one piece of our students' abilities. It's not a complete reflection of our students, but rather just one piece of those. Tests, they can measure a plethora of things. And the ones that we give are achievement tests as well as aptitude tests. Tests can also help your teachers of your students identify areas that they need assistance in. And so for students, quite oftentimes you might hear your student being referred to as being in an RTI program, which is a response to intervention. And this is an extra support that the school district and the school have put into place to support students in specific areas that can be identified by the assessments. Also, the standardized assessments do help the schools decide where, as a whole, we need to put a bigger focus on. If you have a student that's in kindergarten through 2nd grade, you're going to see coming in next months and next school year a huge, huge focus on literacy. Because using the assessments, not just as a student level or classroom level, but at a district level, helped us identify that literacy is a very big piece. And so assessment can measure all of those different pieces for our students. So the first one that I am going to share is the PALS Pre-K test for 4K students. So PALS is a test that is used to assess letter sound and sound ID by our 4K students, sound awareness of our 4K students, rhyming, word and print awareness, as well as their name writing. In the state of Wisconsin, every pupil or every student that is enrolled in a 4-year-old kindergarten to 2nd grade has to be assessed annually at the state level for their reading readiness. And so Racine Unified School District uses the PALS pre-K test to assess our 4K students. The tests are given 3 times a year. So there's the initial test that is given when students enroll and start in fall. There's a mid-year check-in point where we see how students are progressing, and then a final administration of the PALS pre-K test that is given in spring. 4K students, if you've had a 4-year-old recently or no one, you know that it's not able and not easy to get them to sit for long periods of time. So the 4K PALS assessment is designed for the assessment sessions to be 15 minutes or less. That way the 4K students can focus on what they are looking at in their letter and sound ID and awareness, and not expecting 4K students to sit for an hour or 2 hours, because our 4Kers are movers and shakers. And so the tests and the assessment sessions are designed to be less than 15 minutes when they are administered by their teacher in a one-on-one setting. This is just a snapshot of what the pre-K PALS test would look like with our students when they are taking it with their 4K teachers. And it is, again, letter and sound awareness. The teacher sits with them in the one-on-one setting, and they go through and identify letters and the sounds letters make, and the teachers will document as they're working one-on-one with the students. And again, the PALS pre-K test is that precursor to help support those literacy skills at the early levels, and then we'll feed into kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade literacy focus.
Amanda, I don't know if you know, but that slide is very blurry.
I was just noticing that the scan didn't come in as clear as I had hoped it would have.
Sure.
Hopefully the other scan-ins worked better. All right, so the next test that is given at Racine Unified School District for our 4K through 8th grade students and into high school is our access testing. Access testing is administered to our English language learner students. So students who have identified at enrollment with RUSD that their primary family language spoken in the home is other than English become part of our ELL program. And the English language learner program works in a variety of areas to support the students with their English language development. And so the access test is given annually to monitor their students meeting academic English. And this is an assessment that is requested by the US federal government under the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. And this test is used to monitor and report our English language learners' progress and development in 4 specific areas, and that is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. The access test is given. It is currently being given as we speak in Racine Unified School District to our ELL students. It is put onto our schedule and runs through typically about a 6-week period. And so the ELL students work on the access test to demonstrate where they are in their English language learning, and they then receive a score on a scale of 1 to 6 with their English language skill. The access testing results come back, and they do then rank the student again on that scale of a 1 to a 6 in the areas of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And again, oftentimes there's a confusion as to whom takes the English language learner assessment of access, but it's any student who, again, identifies upon enrollment as English not being the primary language that is spoken in the home, or English is not their primary language. And so in addition to having ESL classes and supports in the building, the access test results then are used to support their development as well. Monica. Monica, I see you have your hand raised.
She may be having problems with her sound. It looks like a telephone versus the other one looks like a mic that's muted. So maybe she'll be able to get on shortly.
We'll just give her a second to see if she can get it to work.
Sure. And Monica, you can also put your question in the chat because we'll be monitoring that as well.
Correct. So as I stated, access testing is taking place currently. Access tests are not scored within the district, but rather they are sent out. And then we receive the access testing results back, and again, are used to level our students that are ELL students and are used then to assist them in developing their English language skills.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Monica, did you get it to work?
Can you hear me?
A little bit.
Okay. I'm sorry. Like I said, my son doesn't take that test. I know he did in kindergarten. But then I do have a family member who keeps taking it. I mean, as a Spanish-speaking family, we do have a problem with that since our kids, they speak mostly English, only Spanish at home. So it's kind of a trick question, I guess, when they ask the primary language and then they are stuck with it. And now it's so hard to take them off because they speak English. I mean, they don't take ESL, they don't take any. So I've spoken with teachers about that, even his ESL teachers, former ESL teachers. And we all agree that those questions, even the students who only speak English, they probably won't even be able to pass it. So, I mean, what's the purpose of this test really?
So the federal government requires the monitoring of ELL students and ELL progress from the school districts. And so the purpose of the test, and typically what I found when I taught, were the students that were new arrivals and ranked lower on the access test were the ones that benefited the most from that targeted ESL instruction. I can't speak specifically to your student's situation of how he was in ESL and is no longer in ESL, but I can take your student's ID number and then reach out to the department tomorrow and have someone contact you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and I'm mostly talking about my nephew. I took off my son. It took me a year to take him off, and it was a fight with RUSD, but I did. But with my nephew, I mean, he takes English. He takes every class in English and everything, and it's just so hard because he misses his main classes to take this test.
Right.
So he misses either science or math. So I think it hurts more the students than it helps them.
Right.
In my
and
opinion.
Again, it's a hard one because it is not one that's given to everybody in the building. So they are pulled out of specific classes to administer the access test. But again, coming through the global language department at the school district, I am more than happy to pass that information along for them to take a peek at his info if you'd like me to.
Okay, I will. I can actually email you if that's okay.
No, not a problem.
All right, I absolutely will do that. Thank you.
Always, always. I'm here to help. Was there any other questions on access? I didn't want to miss anything before I went to the next one. Okay. The next major, excuse me, assessment that will be coming up in spring is the Wisconsin Forward exam. Again, this is a state required assessment that is given to our students in spring of each year. The Forward exam is designed to support school districts in checking and gauging how our kiddos are doing on learning the Wisconsin academic assessment and standards. We did not take the Forward exam in the 1920 school year due to COVID. However, we are back to taking it this previous spring and again in this coming spring. Back in the day, as I remember when I was a kid, it was a big packet of papers. It is now an online assessment. And the forward assessment is used not only to gauge individual student success in learning on the academic standards, it's also used to support the Wisconsin State Report Card that is back this year as well. And so the forward exam is also one of the indicators that the state of Wisconsin uses to look at how school districts are doing in supporting their own students. The Wisconsin Forward exam, as I stated, is online, and DPI is kind enough to have samples of the forward exam available for families to see, and also go through and use different sample items to look at what does the forward exam look like for specific grade levels in that new online assessment format. The forward exam covers a huge plethora of content that students learn during the school year. And it meets both, again, like I said, state and federal requirements that are put on public school districts for what is needed to determine how the school districts are doing in presenting the state standards in the learning setting. Hello, Ms. McDowell. Welcome.
Thank you.
So as I stated, the Wisconsin Forward exam is given in the springtime. On this slide, I did put in an example of a math question that is given to third graders. And you can see that it is very, third grade specific. And so the first question that would be given to a third grader in the math setting would be related to the clock. And so students will have, again, in the online format, the ability to go through the questions at their own pace. They select their answers and then they click go on. However, every grade level does not take every test on the forward, and the state of Wisconsin has determined that all students in grades 3 through 8 take the ELA in the math portion. In 4th and 8th grade, they take science, and in 4, 8, and 10th, they take the social studies forward exam. So there is a range of scores, and then like I stated earlier, those scores are used in the Wisconsin State Report Cards that were just released this past fall, which rates school districts, and this is just one of those areas and exams that the state gives, district procures it, and it is then reflected in the state report card. The Wisconsin Forward exam has had various names over the years. When I was in school, it was the CBTS testing. It was the Badger exam at one point, but there has been a consistent assessment given to our primary grade levels for years and years and years back all the way to the 1980s. And so now it is called the Wisconsin Forward. The next assessment is one that is currently happening right now as well, and that is the NWEA MAP testing. Upon our return from the winter break, our students in grades 1 through 8 started taking their NWEA MAP test. The NWEA MAP test was vital for me, as I stated, when I was an English teacher, because it allowed me to have real-time results of what my students were able to reach, and also how to adapt what was going on in the classroom to meet the needs of those students who may not be as strong in specific areas. It allowed me to set up small group settings for my students to learn in. And again, it is given currently as we speak to our students in grades 1 through 8. The MAP test represents the term's measures of academic progress, and it not only looks at the students' achievement, but it also looks at their growth. And so with the MAP testing, it is given 3 times a year, fall, winter, and again in spring. It is again a computerized test, and it adapts to a student's ability. My second grader is taking the test, and he even commented when he came home from school today that when he answered a question right, it kept getting harder and harder. And then when he got one wrong, it got easier again. And that is how the computerized MAP test level to determine where our kiddos are at. In an ideal setting, MAP states that students should get approximately half of their questions correct and half incorrect. And then that again will help determine the student's achievement level. Having been an intervention teacher when I was in the classroom, the MAP test is what was used to help determine which students need those additional interventions. And for me, it was in the reading area, and supporting them based on what the MAP test would allow me to create small group settings for students that needed assistance in a specific area, as well as those that then would then test out and switch into a different classroom for a different type of intervention. MAP tests are super, super important for me. Again, not only as a teacher, but as a building administrator, because it allowed us to keep track of our students' growth and progress. It helped us level our students into areas. It helped provide interventions for that RTI block, whether it was math or English. And it really allowed us to see what areas our students need additional help in, or ones that are ready to keep on going and keep on striving forward. And so the MAP test, again, is one that is immediate results that are given to the teachers and allow the teachers to apply those results at the classroom level, at the individual student level. And those results are available to all your students' teachers, not just your English teacher, not just your math teacher, but again, across the board, and all the other teachers will have access to your MAP testing results. With MAP testing, we also have the amazing ability for parents to have access and see how their students are doing as well. And parents are able to track over time the growth of their students, as well as areas that students may need additional support in. This is an example of one of the growth charts that has been given for students. And it also, as you can see, can track how students would then be projected to do on the ACT test in high school. So the student who, excuse me 1 second while I say something to my own child. Sorry, again, my own child is on a roll tonight as well. So with this projection, you can see that the student that I pulled their chart out started out very high up as a spring of 2019 at a 212 and was in the blue area. And as they have taken the MAP test throughout 3rd grade and 4th grade and now into 5th grade, you can see the projection and also on track to where MAP estimates the student will be when they reach the high school level. And based on their winter of 2022 test that they just took this week, they are projected to score an overall score of 24 on the ACT. And again, these are immediate pieces that teachers will see when students complete their MAP test. And they can use those again to create lessons as well as adapt the classroom instruction to meet students' needs across the board. Oh no. So what does this all mean? We hear about assessments, we hear about testing. What does this mean for families at home? When do the tests happen? When do the tests take place? Who's going to take the test? So on the Racine Unified School District website, as you can see on the one side, I have included the link for under academics, which is the assessment, accountability, and school support. And as I stated, I am the individual who does those areas. And I've included a live link for families to be able to access the 21-22 assessment calendars. When you click that live link, you will see on the right-hand side of the screen that it is broken down by time of the year, as well as what assessments are given to what students. So across the top, it has the assessment, the testing dates, as well as the grade levels, which will be taking the assessment. And we have identified, sorry, excuse me, by grade levels. And on the bottom, it goes down to even a high school tab, so we can get to see where the high school students will be taking things such as the Aspire test, the ACT test, and again, what grade levels are specific to take those. Also included in the assessment calendar on the RUSD website are live links to give an explanation to parents on what those assessments are. Because a lot of times my student would come home and say, Mom, I took a test. I'm not sure what it was for. And then being able to go and look to see which test he had taken and in what area. And so I've made it a big focus to be able to share with parents what assessments are coming, having parents be able to support their students in preparing for the assessments. And so all of this information is available on the RUSD website underneath the Assessment, Accountability, and School Support tab, because parent awareness is that first step to help our kiddos be successful. So all of this just comes flowing out at once. And the big question is, what can we do as parents to help prepare our kiddos for the assessments? And so test taking is hard. I was always someone who did much, much better on the day-to-day piece of classroom. And then it would get to the big test day and I would just, I would break. And so there are things that we can do to support our students in preparing for these standardized assessments that they do receive in the schools. The first one is, when we know that the assessment is coming, to help optimize a student's ability is to make sure they get enough sleep and a good breakfast. If they're not feeling well, it's okay for them to stay home because there are the ability to reschedule and retake those assessments. Taking a test when you're not feeling good, as we all know, is not the way we want to be assessed on what our ability is. If a student isn't feeling well, had a tough time, they are able to reschedule those assessments. Whether it is the forward, the access, the map, they are given over a window of time, so they are able to make those up. Reviewing test taking strategies with your kiddos, having your students have that ability to decode and use words and phrases. My youngest, a huge, huge comic book reader. And so I was always afraid or worried that, oh, it's a comic book. It's not a level 4 book. It is a comic book. But again, encouraging him to use those decoding skills in those day-to-day pieces, even with his comic books, helps support him in the assessment format as well. Another way to help prepare our students for the assessment is to know what's coming. And a parent having that even conversation with students about this is the test that's coming up helps support the students and get them ready for the assessment. Talking with teachers. What are the classroom preparations? What are the plans to get the students ready for the assessment? I know when I was a building level principal, I made huge competitions between classrooms and students for their growth, and having students live up to, having it be a contest to see who could go up the most. It's not who had the highest score, but who could grow the most. And again, remaining relaxed and positive is a huge support for our kiddos. And again, it's not how high of a score, it's how much they grow and what they can show and what they know. And having students feel confident in themselves as they are going into the assessments is a huge way for the students to prepare for those assessments. Teachers are always able to answer those questions as it comes to what to expect from the assessment, as well as what they do with the results when they have the assessment completed. And as I said, those MAP assessments are the ones that teachers use on a day-to-day basis to help design class, small group instruction, whole group instruction. And so having the knowledge to support the students in those specific areas they show they need assistance with, or challenging them in the areas that they're off the charts excited in. And so the teachers do use the assessments, but knowing and having that conversation with your child's teacher is a huge asset to support the assessment environment. If I sneeze, I apologize. So how to understand the results that students receive from those assessments. If your student received access scores this summer in the envelope, there was a short explanation that goes with them. But again, on the RUSD website, we do have links that assist in helping parents understand, especially if school is not in session, what those assessments mean. Standardized tests have been and hopefully continue to be described, as we stated at the beginning, as just a snapshot at that moment. It's not going to determine everything from point A to point Z, but again, it's a snapshot of where your student is at that given point in time. And as a parent, being able to understand those assessment results is a big part in supporting where your students are in those classes. If students are in a tier 1 intervention, what does that mean versus a tier 2 versus a tier 3 RTI intervention? And how those classes are used to support our students, again, that growth piece. Everything is a growth piece and a growth focus. There are multiple ways that you can work with your school as it relates to your child's assessments. And the big piece is not only parent-teacher conferences, but again, any time you have the ability to talk to teachers. It can be an email, it can be a phone call. It can be, hey, I got this in the mail today saying that my student received X, Y, and Z on their MAP test. Can you give me a little bit how I can assist? Having those conversations with teachers is a huge way to be able to support your students at home. My oldest son always did extremely well on the English portion and the ELA portion of his MAP test, but his math portion was a lot harder. So we focused on a lot of math assistance to help him as he went through those stages and could focus on those growth pieces. And the information that is provided with the standardized assessment is used with what the teachers observe in classrooms on a daily basis to help and support students with the instruction on the Wisconsin state standards. And so understanding the results, again, there are live links, there are letters that are sent. However, the biggest one is always feel free to reach out and have those conversations with your child's teacher, as well as, you know, myself, the Title I interventionist at your child's building, but it's having those conversations on how to support if you have questions in addition to what is received with the test results. And as I said, you can always reach out to your student's teacher or the school, my office. And again, those live links that are now on the RUSD webpage are designed to support you as parents, knowing what's coming and help support your students prepare for them as well. So I know that was so much information in such a short piece of time, but I really want to open it up to questions if people have questions that I can support with. Miss Monica.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I guess my question about the MAP test. So does the state is the